Okay. Yeah, recording has started.
Brilliant. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are very excited to be launching the Co-op Foundation Heart of Books partnership for round 3 of the Carbon Innovation Fund. This slide just gives you a little bit of an overview. Oh, hang on. Sorry, we're going to admit somebody. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello.
Hello. We were just getting started. We're recording, and then people can catch up if they join a bit late. But yeah, we just thought we'd crack on.
Yeah. But hi, welcome. So welcome to the session. And this afternoon, we're going to be talking through the eligibility criteria and everything hopefully that you'll need to know about round 3 of the Carbon Innovation Fund and the Heart of Books partnership. So we're going to talk through things like the assessment criteria, the eligibility, timelines, learning impact, everything. And then we'll leave some time at the end if you have any questions. Just asking everybody to stay on mute until that part of the call, and to either pop your questions in the chat or hold on to them until we get there. We've just got a lot of information and hopefully we'll answer most of your questions. So we just wanted to kick off by introducing us, who we are. We're the Co-op Foundation and we're the Co-op's charity. As it says in the name, we believe cooperation is at the heart of stronger communities, and we hope that this makes us a different kind of funder. We developed a new strategy last year, and we asked 100 young people to shape our new vision and tell us what they see as a fair and cooperative community of the future. And as I'm sure you're probably aware, it was no surprise that sustainable communities and sustainability came out as one of the key 6 priorities. So we recognise that it's crucial for us to recognise the climate crisis as a foundation, and the Carbon Innovation Fund has been part of our response. As it says in the name, we really value cooperation and collaboration, and the fund is a partnership between the Co-op Foundation and Co-op Food, putting the money Co-op food stores make from the sales of green compostable carrier bags to really good use. And now we're very, very excited to partner with Heart of Books Community Foundation in round 3. I'm going to pass over to Ella, who's going to talk us through why peat.
Yes. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of the background about why we've chosen this particular theme area. We recognise it's a little bit niche. We guess you know Heart of Books Community Foundation already, which is why you're here. So hopefully that little introduction to the Co-op Foundation and who we are was useful. So just to say that we're in the 3rd year of our Carbon Innovation Fund. In the pilot year, we funded a kind of very broad range of initiatives around more sustainable food and farming. We decided to focus that down a little bit for the 2nd year, just to have a bit more of a coherent cohort of funded partners and share learning. And that was around reducing the reliance on synthetic fertilisers and synthetic feed, nitrogen-based fertilisers and soy-containing feed, and this year we are focusing on reduction of peat in farming, sort of livestock. So some of the reasons why Co-op Food are particularly close to that issue. The Co-op were the first major retailer to ban the sale of peat-containing compost, and we are aware that that is just the start of the work. So based on the discussions that we've been having with experts, we are very aware, as you will be if you are watching this, that it is a really key issue in the way that we want to grow and farm. So you'll know all the environmental benefits of peat, and what an incredible carbon sink it can be, all the amazing things that it does to kind of stop water runoff and so on. But we also know that there's a real degradation. About 80% of the UK peatlands have been degraded, and it's often broken up and used for farming and food production as well, which can really, although it's very important, it can further damage the peat soils. So what we're trying to do in this round of funding is to fund some initiatives that can reduce the amount of peat that we need to grow crops within food supply chains, and then remove peat that perhaps to grow crops within food supply chains, so reduce or remove, and then to look at maybe sustainable management ways of looking after peat soils by using alternative non-damaging farming methods for crops or livestock grazing. So I'm going to run through a little bit of information about grants and who can apply. Check the slide there. Okay, so we've got grants available of up to £90,000. So that's a partnership between ourselves and Hot Books. That's a match funding project there. We encourage full cost recovery in the applications that you do. So that's around including all your associated core and overhead costs within the project budget. We don't want you to be out of pocket by doing this piece of work for us. You can talk to us if you want any clarification about that, but there's no sort of maximum percentage of your overhead costs that we can accept in the budget. We ask that projects start within 6 months of the grant being awarded, but thereafter they can be spent over any time period. So if your piece of work needs to take 6 months or 10 months or 2 years or 3 years, that's okay, that's fine. It just does need to start within 6 months of the grant being awarded. But other than that, we want it to be in the timeline that's the most appropriate for the work that you want to do. So we will say, in the main fund that we're running just exclusively with Co-op, there are grants available of up to £150,000. And if your project really absolutely requires more than £90,000 worth of funding, you may choose to apply to the main fund, which has obviously got that higher grant threshold. What we would say there, though, that you would then put yourself into competition with all of the other applications, so it will be much more competitive. You can do that if you want to. The guidance and application for that main fund are on the Co-op Foundation website, so we can point you to that if you need, but we would encourage you, if possible, and you're from Buckinghamshire and you've got an appropriate project, to apply through this fund, just because it will be much less competitive and much easier for us to pull out appropriate projects there. So I'm going to pass over to Sarah to talk a bit through who can apply.
Thanks, Hella. So for the Buckingham shortlist, it's open to any not-for-profit organisations. We would say that if your project is a collaboration, the lead applicant must be a not-for-profit. It's fine if you're working with another type of organisation, for example, a PLC, but the lead applicant must be a not-for-profit. And to be funded, the project must be able to evidence that the work doesn't lead solely to a private gain of wealth. Again, that leads back to our charitable objectives. You must be able to commit to open source sharing of information, processes and learnings. We can't fund work that's protected by intellectual property rights. You must be legally constituted and have a bank account in the organisation's legal name, and you must be able to evidence a pilot of the work that you plan to carry out for your funded project. You yourselves, your organisation, doesn't need to have carried out this pilot, but we just need sort of some proof of concept work and evidence of that. You must also be able to carry out your proposed project in the UK. That links back to our charitable objectives. We also prefer that the funded organisation has at least 2 unconnected members on your board or management committee. By unconnected members, we mean people who are not related or married, and by board or management committee, we mean your directors or trustees as listed with your organisation's governing body. So it could be Companies House or the Charities Commission. We appreciate that there may be some family businesses or family farms that want to apply for the funding. Please don't be put off. We just ask that you get in touch with us to chat about this. There may just be some extra checks and balances we need to put into our project management with you. Also, if there's any co-op suppliers who are in Buckinghamshire that want to apply, you would be welcome to, but we would say that there won't be any priority over other applicants. So moving over onto the flip side, unfortunately, of what we can't fund. So before we get to the criteria, we just thought it'd be better to mention these ones. The first one is any projects that want to use funding to purchase or use ready-made peat-free compost to use on your crops. While we appreciate this idea in principle may fit with the criteria, it does feel a little bit too simplistic and doesn't demonstrate any innovation or new alternatives to ensure peatland isn't damaged within our food system. We can't support projects which do not support food and farming of food. So unfortunately, we can't support projects that are focused specifically on horticulture, focusing on bedding plants or pot plants or ornamental plants. It's okay if your project has a combination of both farming of food and horticulture, but we would say that there needs to be a significant focus on the farming of food. The same goes for projects focusing on peatland restoration only. We can't support them unless there is an element of farming for food. We do recognise that this is so important though. Co-op have partnered with RSPB on a large-scale multi-million peat restoration project, so you can have a look on their website to see what they're doing there. We can't fund projects that focus on policy and lobbying initiatives, and we can't fund brand new ideas before that initial pilot or proof of concept. We can't fund projects that can't commit to open source sharing, the flip side of what I've already said, and this does include any work on patents or intellectual property which will lead to private gain. We can't fund retrospective projects and costs, so if the work's already happened, we can't provide funding for that, and we can't fund projects that take place outside of the UK. So we're going to get to the nitty-gritty now, and Ella's going to tell us about the criteria.
Thank you, Sarah. So I will go through the criteria in a bit more detail. So as hopefully you know, we can accept applications from today, the 14th of February, up until midday on the 15th of March. So there's a month there for an application to be completed. The questions are published in a document form on the website if you want to have a look or draft some answers before you start in earnest. And the application form, the online form, is live now as well if you wanted to have a look at that. So we've split our funding criteria into essential and desirable, and you'll notice that the questions on the form map directly over onto each of the criteria. So we've awaited the essential criteria more heavily in the scoring process, and we'd like you to kind of, as a sense check, to make sure that you can comfortably answer those questions to be funded. If you feel like you've got a natural answer when you have a read of them, that's a good sign, rather than kind of trying to squeeze something in or shoehorn something in. We also hope that you will be able to answer some of the desirable criteria. We appreciate that not every project would address all of them, but we think that applications that score well will be able to answer at least some of those desirable criteria. So the first essential criteria is an awareness of how your work both reduces and emits greenhouse gases. So by that we mean the net greenhouse gas emissions of the work that you want to do. So we know that by preserving peatland, your work will be reducing greenhouse gas emissions and it will be protecting that natural landscape. But we are realistic that the work that you deliver is also likely to emit some greenhouse gases. So just for example, through importing materials or using energy or many other things. So we'd just like to see an awareness there of the net greenhouse gas emissions. If you've only got some of that information, that's okay, just provide what you can. And if you have any mitigation plans for how to reduce those greenhouse gases, that may lead to a really strong answer. Second essential criteria is around showing awareness of those negative knock-on effects of unintended consequences. So we know that often when we're trying to solve one problem, we can risk creating another. So aside from the greenhouse gas emissions, which we've asked you to talk about in the previous question, it would just be really good to get an idea of any potential adverse social or environmental consequences that you think your work might have. And we know that many projects will have some sort of knock-on effects, and we just ask that you're open and honest about it. And then again, sharing any sort of mitigation plans will lead to a much stronger answer, we think. Next essential criteria is around collaboration and cooperation. So as a co-op foundation, the co-op, we like a bit of cooperation. This could be at any or every stage of your project. So we're really interested, for example, in how you might include the kind of target audience of the work that you do. So that could be involving farmers in the production of a peat alternative to be used on farms. It could also look like engaging with a university or research centre to gather data or evaluate your project. So lots of opportunities for collaboration. Just to note, if you're going to work in partnership, it is your responsibility as the lead applicant to do a bit of due diligence on the people that you want to work with, but we can support with some ideas about how best to do that if you want to know. So just get in touch if you want to ask any questions about that. The last essential criteria is about sharing learning. So as we've already mentioned, really important that your learnings are open source and doesn't lead to any intellectual property rights or patents. And we are looking for projects that have got a really good dissemination plan to share the work widely, and we'd like to get an idea of your plan to share the learning through your project. So those are the essential criteria, and then just to quickly look at the desirables. So environmental benefits kind of above and beyond the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and the peatland, and how you might measure that. So for example, increased biodiversity on the site that you're working on that you would measure through a biodiversity metric calculator, as one example. There'll be lots of different things there that could be possible. We're interested in human benefits, so projects that benefit people. So this could be the general community that it benefits, or specific groups of people. So this could be providing volunteering opportunities, for example, or maybe reduce cost of inputs for farmers. That could look like all kinds of different things. And the last desirable criteria is around scalability. So we're really interested to understand how you think your work could be scaled up to increase its impact and benefit, perhaps within food retail supply chains or by kind of increasing its geographical scale. And we'd be really interested to hear how you plan to take affordability into account when scaling up, because we know that costs can be a real barrier. So just the last couple of points on applications. Just to let you know that if anyone makes the shortlist but are unsuccessful, we do have a network of other environmental funders that we could be able to pass your application on to who may be interested. So we would ask your permission to do that, but that is an option that's there. And just the last kind of logistical point, when you submit your application, if you just make sure that your email address is typed in correctly, that otherwise we won't have any way of getting back in touch with you. But if it's put in correctly there, you should get a copy into your email address. So if you've not had a copy back once you've submitted your application, then just follow up and check that we've got it and we can have a look for that. Okay, I just need to move slide on. Okay, so just to talk very briefly about opportunities with co-op suppliers. So we are a separate legal entity to the co-op within the business, but we are obviously connected to them as their corporate foundation. And so we ask organisations when they apply to us if they'd be interested in the option of collaborating with a current co-op supplier. There's no preference given to you if you do or don't want to engage in that. It won't be kind of held against you if you don't want that opportunity, but it's just there as an option. If you say yes and you're successful with the grant, then we will send details of the organisations that we fund to the co-op supplier network after the grant's been awarded, and that will be reviewed by any suppliers that are interested in, and they then may get in touch with you just to look at how some kind of collaboration could happen. So we kind of act as a broker to make the connection, and then your organisation and the supplier would go ahead and do whatever it is that feels like you want to do. So there could be some really mutually beneficial opportunities there. There could be kind of technical and practical insights from the supplier, and the partners that we fund might bring kind of fresh ideas in and new challenges to the suppliers. So it could create a really exciting collaborative opportunity. Like we said, it's ultimately your choice if you went ahead with the partnership. Even if a supplier approached you, there's no pressure to say yes if it doesn't feel like the right fit. But hopefully, you know, there might be a kind of flourishing partnership there that would flourish into its own kind of separate piece of work. Just to say, we can't award any additional funding for that work with suppliers. It's just a separate opportunity rather than something that we can add funding onto. So that was just a quick note on that. So I'm going to pass back to Sarah just to very briefly talk about how we look at learning and evaluation through the fund.
Thanks, Ella. So for this round of the Carbon Innovation Fund, we as a foundation are looking to commission a consultancy to work with funded partners to support on learning and evaluation and help you to measure your impact and evaluate your projects. We hope to have funded partners who are successful to give you the opportunity to be involved in commissioning the consultancy, because we want to make sure that any expert we have will meet your needs. It's anticipated that partners will be supported to examine your approach, whether it works, also why and how, and any strengths and challenges that you come across. And we'll be asking you to produce your own evaluation report with their support. We hope that the evaluation tools and a public final overall programme evaluation produced by the consultancy will help projects to have clear success measures and create an interesting resource for any future funders or interested parties. The Carbon Innovation Fund team will also provide opportunities for you to come together with other partners to learn from each other and share learning together. We've really found that in our previous rounds that this has really benefited partners. The connection has been great, and partners have been surprised about the synergies between projects and how helpful it's been to speak to one another, and they felt part of a bigger picture. Just to note, we actually recommend that when you're considering your budget for your project and your application, we recommend that 5% is allocated to learning and evaluation work, not just for your project, but to engage with other partners and the consultancy. We appreciate you might want to set more aside than that, which is absolutely fine. But for those specific, for that specific work, we'd ask you to put aside 5%, and just consider it when putting in your application. So just to give you some final information around the timelines. So the stage 1 applications open today. You'll be able to access the application forms from both Heart of Books and Community Foundation websites. The stage 1 applications will close on the 15th of March. So like we said, that gives you 1 month. And then we'll let you know the outcome of stage 1 week commencing the 15th of April. If your project is shortlisted, we'll then ask for you to share some additional information about your project and some due diligence information. The deadline to share that will be the week commencing the 29th of April we'll invite you to an assessment call. Please don't panic. That sounds a lot more serious than it is. It really is just a call to get to know you and your project and answer a few questions. And they will happen from the week commencing the 13th of May. The decision-making panel will happen on the week commencing the 24th of June, and we'll share those decisions with the shortlist week commencing the 27th of June. From July onwards, we'll share the grant agreements and get those signed and make sure that any monies awarded will be coming to you. And from September, we'll make a public announcement of funded partners. And if you have consented to us sharing your information with the Co-op Supply Chain Network, that's when we'll do that. And I think I'm going to pass back to Ella to just let you know a bit more about our partnership with Heart of Books.
Yeah, so just to say kind of on the logistical point there, this is a match funding partnership between the Co-op Foundation and Heart of Books Community Foundation. So we're kind of funding it together, but just to say the grant that your organisation would receive if you were successful would be awarded from Heart of Books Community Foundation, and you would hold a grant agreement with them. And then someone within the Co-op Foundation team, so possibly myself or Sarah or one of our colleagues, would be kind of given to you as a main point of contact for the grant. And it may be that someone from the Heart of Books team joins in on those kind of catch-up calls and things like that as we go forward. But we as the Co-op Foundation would be responsible for keeping in touch with you in the first instance. So we can talk a bit more about that later as we go if that's useful, but just to flag that any grant that you received would come from Heart of Books rather than from the Co-op Foundation initially. And I don't know, to put you on the spot, Henry, if you wanted to give any kind of thoughts about the fund or the partnership from a Heart of Books point of view.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we're really excited about working with the Co-op Foundation on such an important piece of work. The environment and all its different facets has been a massive part of what we're trying to do more of, I would say, as a foundation. We've been perhaps it's perhaps not been right at the top of our agenda for as it perhaps should be. So the opportunity, I think, to work with bigger national funders, but looking at the local place in Buckinghamshire is really important for us, and it's been it's been great working with the team there to put this together, and something that's really exciting and has the possibility to make a substantial amount of change. So we're glad to have the opportunity in Buckinghamshire to sort of pull out a particular project, and we'd really encourage partners locally to get involved and put bids in.
Thanks, Henry. So we're going to go to questions now, and I think we're going to stop recording there, but I would say please do email us. We're foundation@coop.co.uk. We can share that email address again later. If you've got specific technical questions about your project that you want us to answer or anything that you want to clarify, please do get in touch with us. You can get in touch with Henry and the team, and between us we hopefully should have the answer to your question. We can start recording now, I think. Sarah, were you the recording person? Can you